Henry David Thoreau. You might ask whether he's actually an anarchist, or I guess I said this about Godwin. I might say this about a few. Close enough for me. I guess, associating any particular, say, philosophical, much less political doctrines to Emerson or Thoreau is difficult. They, in some ways, they're literary rather than philosophical figures, or they, in principle, didn't much care if they contradicted themselves as expressed by both Emerson and Whitman, famously. Um, that wasn't really what they were, magnificent consistency throughout wasn't really their main thing. Their main thing was writing what was true now for them beautifully. There's not many figures I love more than Thoreau. This is a kind of a cliche for people like me, I guess, white dudes of a certain age or whatever, but, well, it's true. I guess in the history of philosophy, there's many people I admire. Intellectual history, there's many people I admire. But there's only a couple that I feel such affiliation for that I can get them confused with myself in some way. Or I want their voice to be my voice and stuff. And I would say that that's true above all for me with Thoreau and Kierkegaard. All right. Thoreau's reputation as a political thinker and as an anarchist is certainly based on his essay on civil disobedience, right? Resistance to civil government. And, but it's, I think it's ambiguous in certain ways. It's definitely anti-statist, skeptical as hell about state power and specifically about the government he finds himself ruled by, both the federal government of the United States and the state government of Massachusetts. And his whole objection and the occasion of this. Now, actually, Emerson, Thoreau, Theodore Parker, these are, even the female transcendentalists and so on, Margaret Fuller, are skeptics of state power, whatever, because they're individualists, really, right? This is an individualist philosophical movement. And again, I'm not, a lot of people just will take that to be enough to refute it. Not any more than just a simple characterization of a philosophy as collectivist is enough to refute it. Either one of those can get so extreme that it's ridiculous or dangerous or murderous. Okay? And not only that, but they don't really contrast with one another clearly. I should do something on this, okay? I think the whole, we're going to have to go much more carefully before we pick between individualism and collectivism. Don't pick between those two things. These things are both real. They're both valuable. They're mutually interdependent. Okay? All right. Individuals and collectives. All right, so Thoreau in Civil Disobedience. I'll just give you some highlights. This is one of the most familiar texts in literary and political thought and history, but it's so beautifully wrought. Thoreau, and also it's not. People seem to think it was wildly original, or this is the first time someone said stuff like this, or recommended civil disobedience, legitimacy of civil disobedience. Not at all, man. He's in the middle of a whole atmosphere where everyone agrees on stuff like this, basically. And he comes right out of a Protestant tradition. Which Emerson preached as a Unitarian minister and stuff like this, that has all these positions. All right. So these are not like wildly, they're not individualistic in that sense. They're collective in the sense that the whole social circle that Thoreau is in approves of, advocates these sorts of views, and they're directly secularized or even Buddhicized Unitarian positions. Okay, but also it's going to sound a little like Jefferson. It's going to sound a little like Godwin. It's going to sound a lot like Josiah Warren. It's going to sound like Thomas Paine. Okay, he's not working alone. And this whole atmosphere, I mean, he is Josiah Warren and Henry David Thoreau. They never met. I don't think there's any indication that they knew each other's works. But they agreed on just about everything, all right? They would express it totally differently, but they agreed on lots. I'm trying little bits of this because I love this text so much, taught it so much. Governments show thus how successfully men can be imposed on, even impose on themselves, deceive themselves for their own advantage. It is excellent, we must allow. Yet the government never furthered any enterprise, but by the alacrity with which it got out of its way. Pretty soon he's sounding like Ronald Reagan and shit like this, okay? So sometimes he sounds like Ronald Reagan, and sometimes he sounds like Martin Luther King. He's definitely not on the left or the right, okay? Which make no sense until a little bit later than this. They don't make any sense in the United States on the political spectrum until late in the 19th century. They start to make sense in this period, the 1840s. He's writing 1846, 7, in Europe, from the revolutions of 1848 and so on. But they don't make sense in the United States. And trying to figure out whether Thoreau, a hero of 60s hippies, the avatar of environmentalism, and also an individualist, anarchist, or whatever, is on the left or right, it just doesn't. It wouldn't make any difference either way, anyway. But in terms of the truth of the positions, but also it's just a woefully pathetic structure to bring to material like this. Must the citizen, even for a moment, must the citizen ever, for a moment, or in the least degree, resign his conscience to the legislator? Now, this is an objection to government. Like, I am resigning my conscience to the legislator. I let them do what I think should be done. I am no longer responsible for my own actions, actually. I'm just doing what is required by law. I'm not even responsible for charity and stuff like this because I'm paying my taxes under coercion, and that's going to help the poor or whatever. Must the citizen ever sacrifice his conscience to the legislator? Why has every man a conscience then? I think we should be men first and subjects afterward. It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right. It is truly enough said that the corporation has no conscience. But a corporation of conscientious men is a corporation with a conscience. So, for a organization to behave conscientiously, the individuals in it must have a conscience. Law never made men a whit more just, and by the means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made the agents of injustice. A common and natural result of an undue respect for law is that you may see a file of soldiers, colonel, captain, corporal, privates, powder monkeys and all, marching in admirable order over hill and dale to the wars, against their wills, aye, against their common sense and consciences, which makes it very steep marching indeed. They have no doubt that it is a damnable business in which they are concerned. They are all peaceably inclined. Now, what are they? men at all, or small movable forts and magazines at the service of some unscrupulous man in power. Visit the Navy Yard and behold a Marine, such a man as an American government can make, or such as it can make a man with its black arts, a mere shadow and reminiscence of humanity. A man laid out alive and standing, already, as one might say, buried under arms with funeral accompaniments. That's brutal. And man, it's pretty subversive sounding too. The occasion of this, of course, is the Mexican-American War. And Thoreau, who was an abolitionist of the most firm variety, although not a continuous activist in that cause or any cause, regarded the Mexican War plausibly as being fought to extend slavery. And so, so what we're drafting men from Massachusetts to fight in the Mexican War, or people are volunteering, and they are probably anti-slavery people, right? And they are probably anti-war people. What are they doing? They are so much better than the government that's telling them what to do, and yet they have this feeling that it's their duty to obey something far worse, far more evil than they are themselves. And so they're being made to be evil, or they're being used as inanimate objects. Like I say, that's a bit of a common objection to government. No Kantian should not be an anarchist, as Robert Paul Wolff pointed out. It is not a man's duty, as a matter of course, to devote himself to the eradication of any, even the most enormous wrong. He may still properly have other concerns to engage him. But it is his duty, at least, to wash his hands of it, and if he gives it no thought longer, not to give it practically his support. If I devote myself to other pursuits and contemplations, I must first see, at least, that I do not pursue them sitting upon another man's shoulders. I must get off him first, that he may pursue his contemplations too. See what gross inconsistency is tolerated. I have heard some of my townsmen say, I should like to have them order me to help put down an insurrection of slaves, or march to Mexico. See if I would go. And yet these very men have, directly by their allegiance, and indirectly at least by their money, furnished a substitute. They've supported it after all. And this is an interesting position. Like, I don't have a duty to intervene to create justice in the whole society. I might have other shit I need to do. It's a very typical thing for Thoreau to say. But I do have a duty to make sure that what I'm doing isn't directly oppressing other people. And for example, paying taxes to support the Mexican War is directly oppressing other people. And I have a moral obligation, insofar as I oppose that war, and insofar as I oppose the slavery that is being fought to extend, I have a duty not to participate. And that's why they threw Henry David and Thoreau into jail for one night, because he refused to pay his taxes, his poll tax, directly for the war effort. And much to his chagrin, actually, Emerson's aunt bailed him out. I think that's the right story. I don't know. All right. He totally destroys social contract theory in a few sentences. And he does it in a nice, personal, direct, witty way that is so much better than the way many philosophers operate. And like I say, it only takes 30 words or whatever to kill social contract theory. At the request of the selectmen, I condescended to make some such statement as this in writing. Know all men by these presents that I, Henry Thoreau, do not wish to be regarded as a member of any incorporated society that I have not joined. The state, having thus learned that I do not wish to be regarded as a member of that church, has made a like demand on me since. This was for a tax to support church, which was going on in New England then, though it is said I must adhere to its original presumption this time. If I had known how to name them, I should have signed off in detail from all the societies which I never signed on to, but I did not know where to find a complete list. Right? So that's an attack on tacit consent, without which the whole social contract thing is just a pile of hooey. And with it, it's a bigger pile of hooey. And it just says like, okay, right. I am explicitly withdrawing from my tacit consent from anything that you take me to have tacitly consented with. I don't know how many there might be. You know, perhaps I have inadvertently joined thousands of organizations. You know, just as good an argument as you're giving, Locke, or whatever. But I'm just telling you that I withdraw from them all right now. To which the answer is you can't. To which the answer is, fuck you. You think this is a contract? What are you talking about? Now, one thing I would say about Thoreau is that he, he's more political, or more consistently political, I think, than his mentor and friend Emerson. I think their politics is basically the same. And Theodore Parker, too, who wrote an essay right along. Theodore Parker, the great transcendental preacher and scholar, also refused to pay this exact same tax and also went to jail for it. And made all the arguments that Thoreau makes in Civil Disobedience in his own more scholarly and, restrained way, less literary way. All right, so throughout Thoreau's writings, throughout his journals, not throughout his journals, but periodically in the journals, in striking digressions in many essays and so on, he is more political than you might think he would be. All right. So I just want to give a couple of examples of that. So, for example, his essay "Slavery in Massachusetts," which is about the fugitive slave law and the apprehension of Anthony Burns, the enslaved person, and the riot that ensued in Boston to try to save him and all this stuff. But he just says this in this context: my thoughts are murder to the state. And involuntarily, my thoughts go plotting against her. Now that's pretty straightforward. My thoughts are murder to the state. I think what happened for Thoreau and for William Lloyd Garrison, who we probably should talk about, who is has a hyper-religious version of all these positions, is that when they realized that the governments that they were contributing to and they had grown up inside were countenancing slavery, and when they fully understood in their head what slavery was, that drove them to anarchism, like sort of immediately. Like, this is just completely illegitimate. That's obvious. The kind of authority you're operating in is slavery. Okay, and you can see this because you are enforcing slavery. You know, all right. I don't know. I should pull some, from quotes from elsewhere. What right have you to enter into a compact with yourself that you will do thus and so against the light within you? You can't even enter into a compact with yourself to violate your own conscience later. Is it for you to make up your mind, to form any resolution whatever, and not accept the convictions that are forced upon you, and whichever pass your understanding? So even, and many people argued this, Lucretia Mott too, for example, is whatever contract I've signed, if I didn't, perhaps I didn't realize that signing this contract was going to end up forcing me to do evil. Right? Now, if a contract that I've signed is forcing me to do evil now, as I understand it, should I obey? Well, now we are into a really nice ethical dilemma. But these people's the only answer that's compatible with transcendentalism or whatever is like, no. Next year, you have to be free to obey your conscience next year. Right? You can't contract away your conscience for the rest of your life and your children's life or something like that, as the absurdity of social contract theory presumes you can. All right. Well, I'll try one more passage just to, again, I'm sort of demonstrating the anarchism of Thoreau and just kind of talking about it, and also I hope showing the excellence of some of these formulations and the boldness of them too. My thoughts are death to the state. All right, I don't know. He says this. This is in A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers, which is a travelogue about him and his brother in a boat. Okay, it's a lovely book actually, and I think Walden is a little bit too emphasized in the oeuvre, and some of the other material in the Maine woods and are really, these are great, and a week is also just a lovely book. But somehow he segues from checking out the fish on the Concord River or Merrimack to this, to one who habitually, and this is part of a much longer passage actually on these topics, to one who habitually endeavors to contemplate the true nature of things, the political state can hardly be said to have any existence whatever. It is unreal, incredible, and insignificant to him, to one who habitually endeavors to contemplate the truth. The state is insignificant. And for him to endeavor to extract the truth from such lean material is like making sugar from linen rags when sugarcane is available. So now that's an interesting position, and it's interestingly related or not to anarchism. The state does not exist at all. Right? What could that mean? Anarchism is already true, I guess, if that's the case. But I mean, I think what I could say is like the state does not exist at all as it presents itself. So for one thing, like as the agent, like the Leviathan agent that absorbs all of us and decides for all of us, like all of us together as a single agent. All right. Well, now that is definitely a fiction. The Hobbes Leviathan, that's a fiction. Right? These statists of all kinds love fictions, and their arguments are fictional. At best, right? Like once upon a time, there were all these people and they were like competitive and shit like this, and then they decided to come together and, like just so stories is how statists do political theory. But for someone who wants to contemplate the truth, unlike Plato, Locke, or Hegel on the state can hardly be said to exist. It's not a person. What the fuck is it? It's like some kind of scattered object that purports to be a singular thing, and it's some kind of it deploys a rhetoric of freedom and a reality of repression, but it's just not even. Also, in terms, and he says this over and over again, in terms of actually living your life, the only thing you really want is not to run into the state, like not to get fouled in that machinery. Okay, and that is the way most people live, right? And that's one reason people obey the law, just so that people don't, or pay their taxes, so that the agents of the state don't fuck with them this year or whatever. Is that a contract? Right, and I mean, so the idea of a state as a fiction is powerful, and even many statists, Martin Van Creveld just defines the state as a fictional agent. That's the only kind of really plausible definition, I think. I could even just say, I'm quoting from my own book here, Obscenity, Anarchy, Reality, from 30 some years ago. Friedrich Nietzsche says exactly the same thing. Friedrich Nietzsche is no anarchist, but he also is someone who can see the truth beneath the mumbo jumbo, right? Very, very often. The state lies in all the tongues of good and evil. This is Zarathustra. And whatever the state lies in all the tongues of good and evil, and whatever it says it lies, and whatever it has stolen. Everything about it is false. I mean, these two passages are about the same thing, are the same. It bites with stolen teeth and bites easily. Even its entrails are false. Confusion of tongues of good and evil. This sign I give you as a sign of the state. Verily, this sign signifies the will to death. Verily, it beckons to the preachers of death. Yeah, and the state, as Thoreau at least points out, really is dedicated to death. It's fighting that war over there. It's grabbing slaves and pushing them back into slavery. It operates by incarceration and theft. Okay, so kidnapping and theft, or incarceration and taxation. The best thing you could say about it is that it's evil in the service of good. We can talk about it in the service of good, but we should agree immediately on the evil. And again, that's sort of Thomas Paine's insight, and Rousseau even, and like government is produced by our wickedness, says Paine. Right? And moving that slightly, government is our wickedness expressed. That's Thoreau. And you can see why this is a moment where you would say that, because the U.S. government and the government of Massachusetts are enforcing pro-slavery legislation, okay, and engaged in compromises, right, heading toward the Missouri Compromise and stuff like this, right? All right, and I mean, one other last thing I'll say about Thoreau is I didn't talk about him in Great Pacifists, in my pacifist podcast, because he's not a pacifist. And one way to see this is in his plea for Captain John Brown, or his various writings about Captain John Brown, where he is just in no doubt that violence is justified for the abolition of slavery. All right. Civil Disobedience is not a pacifist text per se. What it says is you shouldn't participate in the evil you condemn, even if you have to go to prison. But it also doesn't say violently resist. Okay. But he does countenance violent resistance, as in the case of John Brown, for example. That's often misunderstood, and I think King mentions Thoreau. But I don't think that Thoreau is a pacifist, actually. But I do think he's an anarchist. Now, we'll talk about Lysander Spooner, who is a figure that makes some of this individualist anarchism much more systematic. We'll see other Thoreauvian outbreaks here and there as we go on. What an American, though. That, to me, is what America means. Civil disobedience is the meaning of America. That's American scripture, in my opinion. That's what I want America to mean, I guess,